Elias Varn thought peace talks would be simple. Instead, he woke up chained in a volcanic dungeon, accused of sabotage by a beastfolk race that could tear him apart with their claws. No translator, no allies, just the scent of scorched metal and the promise of a slow, painful misunderstanding. But then she walked in, graceful, silver-furred, eyes like burning amber. His jailer, or something far more dangerous. When a beastwoman like Sylvara offers food instead of claws and protection instead of punishment, Elias knows he's either being toyed with or chosen. But why him? And what happens when the chains come off? Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters of this thrilling journey. Follow Elias and Sylvara as love and war collide in the vastness of space. Turn on the notification bell to be part of this adventure as soon as the next video drops. The air in the cell was thick, heavy with the stench of sulfur and scorched metal, like someone had decided to barbecue a spaceship engine. Elias Varn blinked against the dim red glow seeping through cracks in the volcanic stone walls, his wrists aching where the alloy cuffs bit into his skin. The Kha'Vren fortress hummed around him, a living beast of ancient steel and molten rock, its pulse vibrating through the floor like a heartbeat from Viratha's fiery core. He shifted, wincing as the chains clinked, and muttered to himself, "Well, Elias, you wanted adventure. Congratulations. You're now the star guest at the galaxy's worst spa. Free handcuffs, no Wi-Fi." He tilted his head back, staring at the ceiling where steam hissed from unseen vents. This wasn't how he'd pictured his diplomatic mission. Nova Reach had sent him to broker peace with the Kha'Vren, a clan of beastfolk rumored to be as fierce as they were enigmatic. The conference was supposed to be a breeze, handshakes, treaties, maybe a celebratory drink. Instead, an explosion had torn through the summit, and now here he was, trussed up like a prize turkey in a fortress that felt one bad day away from erupting. "Note to self," he said, voice echoing off the walls. "Next time someone says peace talks, bring a bomb detector." And a lawyer. Elias closed his eyes, trying to piece together the chaos. The blast, the screams, the Kha'Vren warriors roaring as they dragged him through molten corridors. It was a blur. He negotiated with pirate lords and smugglers before, but this? Negotiating with claws longer than my ego, he chuckled. That's a new one. Where's the diplomatic handbook for don't get eaten by aliens? A low rumble interrupted his thoughts, followed by the grind of metal. The cell door slid open, and Elias straightened, heart kicking up a notch. A silhouette filled the doorway, tall, sleek, moving with the grace of a predator stalking through starlight. The figure stepped into the red glow, and Elias's breath caught, just for a second. She was something else. Her silver first shimmered like liquid metal, catching the light in waves that danced across her lithe frame. Amber eyes burned with an intensity that pinned him in place, sharp and unyielding, yet flecked with a curiosity he couldn't quite read. A leather harness hugged her torso, accentuating curves that were both powerful and impossibly elegant, like a blade forged from moonlight. "Wow," Elias said before he could stop himself, leaning forward as far as the cuffs allowed. "If you're my jailer, I'm ready to extend my sentence. A few weeks, maybe a month. But don't tell the council I said that, deal?" Her head tilted, those amber eyes narrowing slightly, but she didn't respond. Instead, she set a tray on the floor, slabs of grilled meat, still sizzling, and a pile of glowing tubers that looked like they'd been harvested from a reactor core. She straightened, her tail flicking once, a subtle motion that drew Elias's gaze before he yanked it back to her face. "Okay, not much for small talk," he said, flashing a grin. "That's fine. I'm Elias Varn, by the way. Diplomat, occasional troublemaker, currently auditioning for a guy who survives alien prison. You got a name? Or do I just call you Silver Star?" "Sylvara," she said, her voice low and smooth, like a melody woven from smoke and steel. She stepped closer, her boots silent against the stone, and Elias felt the air shift, charged with something he couldn't name. "You talk too much, human." Guilty as charged, he shot back, leaning into his cuffs with a mock shrug. "It's a defense mechanism. Keeps me from panicking when I'm chained up in a volcano fortress. You should try it sometime. Great for stress. Or do you Kha'Vren just growl and call it therapy? Her lips twitched, barely a hint of amusement, but her eyes gleamed like embers catching a spark. She crouched beside him, close enough that he caught a faint scent, wild herbs, leather, and something untamed like a forest after a storm. "You're bold for a prisoner," she said, inspecting his cuffs with a quick glance. "Most would beg by now." "Begging's not my style," Elias replied, his tone light, but his gaze steady. "Besides, I've negotiated with worse. Smugglers, warlords, that one guy who tried to sell me a counterfeit warp drive. Claws and fur? Just a Tuesday." He paused, tilting his head. "Though I gotta say, the service here's better. Food delivery and a personal visit from. Were you a warrior? General? Galactic supermodel?" Sylvara's eyes flicked to his, sharp and unreadable. But there was that spark again, brighter now. "You think words will free you?" she asked, her voice carrying a challenge. "Nah," Elias said, grinning wider. "But they might give me a second helping of whatever that glowing potato thing is. Seriously, what's the deal here? One minute I'm shaking hands, the next I'm guest of honor in a dungeon. Help a guy out. Give me the Cliff's Notes on why I'm the galaxy's least favorite diplomat." She stood, folding her arms, the motion pulling her harness tighter across her chest. Elias kept his eyes on her face, mostly. "You were at the summit when it burned," she said. "The Kha'Vren do not trust easily. Some say you brought the fire." "Me? Bring fire?" Elias let out a laugh, shaking his head. "Lady, I can barely light a campfire without burning my eyebrows off. If I was going to sabotage something, I'd at least pick a place with better decor." He glanced around the cell, wrinkling his nose. "No offense, but this whole molten chic vibe could use a rug. Maybe some candles." Sylvara didn't laugh, but her tail flicked again, and her gaze lingered, dissecting him like a puzzle she hadn't expected to find. "Your scent," she said, almost to herself. "It carries no deceit." Elias blinked, then leaned forward, cuffs clinking. "Whoa, hold up. You're sniffing me? That's... Okay, new diplomatic protocol unlocked. Gotta say, I'm flattered. I use this cologne called Honesty, straight from Nova Reach's finest stalls." He winked, but his pulse jumped when her eyes locked onto his, unflinching, like she could see through every layer of his bravado. "You are strange, Elias Varn," she said, turning toward the door. "Eat. You'll need strength." "Hey, wait," he called as she reached the threshold. "If I'm so strange, why the VIP treatment? Food, chit-chat, no claws on my face yet. What's your angle, Sylvara?" She paused, one hand on the doorframe, her silhouette framed by the red glow. "Not all cages are meant to hold," she said, her voice softer now, threaded with something that made Elias's chest tighten. Then she was gone, the door grinding shut behind her. Elias stared at the tray, his grin fading into something quieter. "Well," he muttered, picking up a tuber and eyeing it like it might bite back. "That was something." Diplomatic tip number 1. When a beastwoman with eyes like fire brings you dinner, maybe don't talk about candles. He took a bite, chewing slowly, his mind racing. Sylvara wasn't just a jailer. She was a question mark, a spark in the dark. And for the first time since the explosion, Elias felt like he might just have a shot at answering it. The Kha'Vren fortress didn't sleep. It groaned, hissed, and rumbled like a beast with indigestion, its volcanic heart pumping heat through stone walls that shimmered red in the dim light. Elias Varn sat cross-legged in his cell, the alloy cuffs on his wrists clinking as he tapped a rhythm on the floor, trying to keep his sanity. 3 days, or was it 4, since the explosion at the summit, and he'd already memorized every crack in the ceiling. The air smelled of ash and molten steel, thick enough to chew, and the only break in monotony was the occasional tremor that shook dust onto his head. "Great," he muttered, brushing grit from his hair. "Free dandruff. If this place starts charging for amenities, I'm filing a complaint with the Galactic Tourism Board." He leaned back, closing his eyes, and let his mind wander to Nova Reach. Cool skies, neon-lit bars, deals struck over drinks that didn't glow like reactor fuel. He'd been a diplomat long enough to know peace talks were dicey, but this? Trapped in a volcano with beastfolk who thought he'd torch their summit? Elias Varn, you've outdone yourself, he said, chuckling. From shaking hands to handcuffs. My career counselor's gonna love this one. A metallic grind snapped him upright. The cell door slid open, and there she was again, Sylvara, the silver-furred enigma who'd brought him food and cryptic one-liners last time. Her silhouette filled the doorway, lit by a pulse of crimson light from the corridor, her fur catching it like a prism, scattering flecks of starlight across her sleek frame. Those amber eyes locked onto him, sharp as lasers but softer tonight, like embers banked low. She carried another tray, more sizzling meat, those weird, glowing tubers, and moved with a predator's grace, her leather harness creaking faintly, hugging curves that Elias tried, and mostly failed to ignore. Well, he said, flashing a grin as he stood, cuffs jangling. Room service returns. I was just thinking about leaving a 5-star review. Cozy cell, great chains, mysterious warrior lady brings snacks. You're spoiling me, Sylvara. She set the tray down, her tail flicking once, a quick slash of silver in the gloom. You talk even when there's no one to hear, she said, her voice smooth and smoky, like a blade dipped in velvet. What? Keeps me sane, Elias replied, leaning against the wall, his grin widening. Plus, I'm practicing for my big breakout speech. You know, the one where I charm the whole fortress into letting me go. Got a title yet, Elias Varn. Not a spy, just misunderstood. What do you think? Her lips twitched, barely, but her eyes gleamed with that curious spark he'd seen before. She stepped closer, close enough that he caught her scent, wild herbs, leather, and something feral, like a wind that could sweep you off a cliff. Charm won't open these doors, she said, glancing at his cuffs. But it might keep you alive. Alive's a good start, he shot back, tilting his head. Though I'm aiming for alive and sipping cocktails on a beach. Want to join me when I get there? I'll make a mean Nova sunrise. He winked, but his pulse jumped when she crouched beside him, her face inches from his, inspecting the cuffs with a frown. Hold still, she said, her fingers brushing his wrist. Her touch was cool, the fine fur on her hands softer than he'd expected, like silk with a hint of static. It sent a jolt through him, and he swallowed hard, his heart doing a little tap dance. Whoa, easy there, he said, voice light but a touch unsteady. You checking my pulse or going full psychic? 'Cause I gotta warn you, my heart's picking up speed, and it's totally your fault. Sylvara's eyes flicked to his, sharp and unreadable, but the corner of her mouth quirked, just for a second. Your heart, she said, her voice low, is loud enough without my help. Her fingers lingered, tracing the edge of the cuff, and Elias felt the air thicken, charged with something that wasn't just the fortress's heat. Okay, that's unfair, he said, leaning forward slightly, cuffs clinking. You can't just walk in, smell like a forest goddess, and mess with my vitals like that. I'm a diplomat, not a cardiologist. He grinned, but his eyes held hers, searching for a crack in that stoic mask. She pulled back, standing, and reached into a pouch at her hip. You test my patience, Elias Varn, she said, but there was no bite in it. She held out a small object, a cord of black leather strung with a red gem, its surface etched with a flame that seemed to pulse faintly. Take this. Elias raised an eyebrow, lifting his cuffed hands. What's this? Medal of Honor for surviving 3 days of glowing potatoes? Or am I being knighted? 'Cause I left my ceremonial cape back home. It's protection, Sylvara said, her voice firm but quiet. She stepped closer again, looping the cord around his neck, her fingers brushing his collarbone as she tied it. The gem settled against his chest, warm, like it had a heartbeat of its own. Wear it. It speaks for you when I cannot. He looked down at the gem, then back at her, his grin softening. Protection, huh? Does it come with a manual? I'm not great with alien jewelry. Last time I wore a fancy necklace, it was a glow stick from a rave, and I'm pretty sure it didn't save my life. Her eyes narrowed, but that spark was back, brighter now. It's not a toy, she said. The Kha'Vren will see it. They'll know. Know what? Elias pressed, leaning forward. That I'm under your protection? Or that I'm officially the luckiest prisoner in the galaxy? Help me out here, Sylvara. You're more mysterious than a 300-page trade contract. And trust me, I've read those. They're brutal. She folded her arms, her harness shifting slightly, drawing his gaze before he yanked it back to her face. You asked too much, she said, but her tone was softer, almost amused. The Kha'Vren do not share secrets lightly. Fair, he said, nodding. But you're not just any Kha'Vren, are you? I mean, most jailers don't hand out magic necklaces or smell like they just walked out of a mythic forest. What's her deal? Warrior? Rebel? Secret poet? Sylvara's tail flicked, and she turned toward the door, but not before he caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or defiance. Eat, she said, glancing back. You'll need strength. Hey, hold up, Elias called, standing as far as the cuffs allowed. You didn't answer my question. Come on, give me something. Why the necklace? Why the food? Why me? She paused, one hand on the doorframe, her silhouette haloed by the corridor's red glow. Because, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, you do not belong to this darkness. The door ground shut, leaving Elias staring at the tray, his fingers brushing the gem. It was warm, pulsing faintly, like a promise he didn't understand. Well, he muttered, picking up a tuber and eyeing it skeptically. That's not cryptic at all. Diplomatic tip number 2. When a Beastwoman gives you jewelry, it's either a lifeline or a really intense first date. He took a bite, chewing slowly, his mind racing. Sylvara wasn't just feeding him. She was risking something. He could feel it. The necklace, her words, that look in her eyes, it all added up to a puzzle he was dying to solve. Okay, Silver Star, he said to the empty cell, a grin tugging at his lips. You've got my attention. Let's see where this goes. The Kha'Vren fortress roared like a beast awakened, its molten corridors pulsing with heat and the distant clang of metal. Elias Varn stood at the edge of his cell, cuffs still biting his wrists, as 2 beastfolk warriors, hulking figures with obsidian fur and eyes like molten steel, yanked him forward. The air was thick with sulfur, the walls glowing red, and every step echoed like a drumbeat in Viratha's fiery heart. Guys, easy on the VIP treatment, Elias said, flashing a grin despite the sweat beading on his brow. I'm a diplomat, not a piñata. Where's the red carpet? Silence, human. One warrior growled, his claws flexing. You face the light of stars. Light of stars? Sounds like a nightclub, Elias quipped, though his pulse raced. Do I get a drink with that? Or is it straight to the main event? The warriors didn't answer, just shoved him through a massive archway carved with swirling runes that pulsed faintly, like veins under the stone. The chamber beyond stole his breath. A colossal arena stretched before him, its floor a slab of polished alloy, reflecting a dome of jagged volcanic rock overhead. Towering pillars, etched with flames and claws, framed the space, and a crowd of Kha'Vren filled tiered stone benches. Hundreds of beastfolk, their fur ranging from silver to coal black, eyes glinting like stars in a storm. At the center stood a raised platform, crackling with tendrils of green plasma that writhed like living serpents, casting eerie shadows. The air buzzed, heavy with ozone, and Elias felt his skin prickle, like the plasma was already tasting him. Wow, he muttered, stumbling as the warriors pushed him toward the platform. This is either the galaxy's worst talent show, or I'm about to be barbecued. Any chance I can negotiate for door number 3? Step forward. The second warrior snarled, releasing him. Elias straightened, brushing imaginary dust off his torn jacket, and flashed a grin at the crowd. Tough room, he said, loud enough to carry. No pressure, Elias. Just another day at the office, except the office is on fire, and everyone is claws. A figure emerged from the shadows, a Kha'Vren elder, his fur streaked with gray, eyes like twin suns. He raised a staff, its tip glowing with the same green plasma, and the crowd fell silent. Elias Varn, he intoned, voice booming, you stand accused of treachery. The light of stars will judge your truth. Elias tilted his head, hands still cuffed. Treachery? Look, I'm flattered you think I'm that interesting, but I'm more of a sign treaties, avoid explosions guy. Can we skip to the part where we all shake hands and go home? The elder's eyes narrowed, and a murmur rippled through the crowd. Some growls, some curious stares. The light does not lie, he said. Step into it, or be cast into shadow. Elias glanced at the plasma, its tendrils coiling like they were eager to grab him. Fantastic, he said under his breath. I signed up for peace talks, not an alien light show sauna. Hey, plasma, let's make a deal. You don't fry me, I don't write a bad review. Cool. He stepped onto the platform, heart hammering, and the plasma surged, wrapping around him like 1,000 electric vines. It wasn't pain, not exactly, but it was alive. The green light burrowed into his skin, pulling at memories. Nova reaches neon skies, a failed deal with a smuggler, the explosion at the summit. Elias gritted his teeth, his knees buckling. Okay, glowy stuff, he muttered, half to himself. If you're digging for secrets, I'm an open book. But can we skip the part where you turn me into a crispy diplomat? I'm not that kind of snack. The plasma pulsed, and he felt it, truth, raw and unyielding, like a spotlight on his soul. He hadn't caused the explosion. He hadn't betrayed anyone. The light seemed to agree, loosening its grip, and Elias exhaled, swaying but still standing. The crowd murmured, a mix of surprise and suspicion, and the elder's staff lowered slightly, his expression unreadable. Before Elias could catch his breath, a voice cut through the arena, clear, fierce, like a blade slicing the tension. He is no traitor. Sylvara stepped from the crowd, her silver fur blazing under the plasma's glow, amber eyes locked on the elder. Her leather harness gleamed, accentuating her strength, and her tail lashed, a defiant arc of starlight. The light of stars has spoken. Elias Varn is clean. Elias blinked, his grin flickering back. Hey, she's right. I'm innocent. Also, I promise not to mess up any more of your rituals, probably. His voice carried a quill-like lilt, and a few younger Kha'Vren in the crowd snickered, their ears twitching. The elder's gaze snapped to him, clearly unimpressed, but the laughter spread, a ripple of amusement that made the air feel lighter. Sylvara strode forward, undeterred, her boots ringing against the alloy floor. He is more than you see, she said, her voice steady but edged with fire. He is the flame unbroken, a spark that does not falter. Elias raised an eyebrow, leaning toward her as much as the cuffs allowed. Flame unbroken? That's badass, don't get me wrong, but I'm kinda attached to Elias. Rolls off the tongue better, you know. The crowd stirred again, more chuckles mixing with growls, and Elias caught a glint of amusement in Sylvara's eyes, fleeting but unmistakable. The elder slammed his staff down, silencing the arena. You speak boldly, Sylvara, he said, his tone icy. This human is an outsider. Why defend him? Because I see what you refuse, she shot back, stepping closer to Elias. Her scent, wild herbs and leather, hit him, grounding him despite the chaos. He carries no deceit. The light proves it. Will you ignore the stars themselves? Elias whistled low, unable to help himself. Damn, Silver Star, you're making me look good. I owe you a drink for this. Or, a whole bar if we get out alive. A few Kha'Vren laughed outright, and the elder's jaw tightened, his staff glowing brighter. Enough, the elder said, but his voice wavered, caught off guard by the crowd's reaction. He turned to Elias, eyes narrowing. You have passed the light of stars, human, but trust is not so easily won. Story of my life, Elias said, shrugging. Trust me, I've bombed plenty of meetings without blowing anything up. If you've got a suggestion box, I'm all ears. Or well, mostly ears. He tapped his head, earning another ripple of laughter from the younger beastfolk, their tails flicking in amusement. Sylvara's gaze flicked to him, sharp but warm, like she was torn between scolding him and smiling. Be silent, she muttered, but her tone lacked venom, and her hand brushed his arm as she stepped back, a fleeting touch that sent a spark through him. The elder raised his staff, the plasma dimming. You are spared, Elias Varn, he said. For now. But the Kha'Vren watch you. Great, Elias said, flashing a grin. I love an audience. Just don't expect me to sing. I'm more of a negotiator than a rock star. The warriors grabbed his arms, pulling him back toward the archway, but Sylvara's eyes followed him, fierce and unyielding, a promise in their depths. As they dragged him away, Elias glanced back, his voice carrying over the crowd's murmurs. Hey, Sylvara, if I'm the flame unbroken, you're definitely the one lighting the match. Her tail flicked, and he swore he saw her lips curve, just for a second, before the arena swallowed her in light. The Kha'Vren fortress pulsed like a living thing, its molten veins humming beneath stone floors that shimmered with trapped heat. Elias Varn stood at the mouth of a tunnel, no longer cuffed, but still feeling the weight of unseen chains. The air was heavy, laced with sulfur and something sweeter, like incense burned in defiance of the volcano's wrath. Sylvara had come for him at dusk, her silver fur catching the corridor's red glow, her amber eyes sharp but softer than before, like a fire banked for the night. She'd said one word, come, and led him here, to a place that felt older than the stars. So, Elias said, falling into step beside her, his torn jacket flapping as he gestured at the tunnel's jagged walls. When you said come, I was hoping for a tour of the gift shop, not a hike through Mordor. What's the plan, Silver Star? Secret party? Alien karaoke? Sylvara's tail flicked, a quick slash of starlight, and she shot him a look, half exasperation, half something he couldn't quite name. You never stop talking, she said, her voice smooth as smoke, edged with a warmth that made his pulse skip. Occupational hazard, he replied, grinning. Diplomats got to keep the conversation going. Though I'm guessing this isn't about trade deals. You gonna clue me in? Or am I walking blind into another light show? He nodded back toward the arena, where the light of stars had nearly turned him into a human sparkler. She didn't answer, just led him deeper until the tunnel opened into a cavern that stole his breath. Crimson crystals jutted from the walls, pulsing with soft light, their reflections dancing like fireflies on a lake of polished obsidian. A circular platform stood at the center, carved with runes that glowed faintly, and above it, a massive crystal hung, refracting light into a kaleidoscope of reds and golds. Kha'Vren warriors lined the edges, their fur glinting, eyes fixed on him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. A low chant rose, their voices weaving a melody that vibrated in his chest, ancient and untamed. Whoa, Elias muttered, pausing at the platform's edge. Okay, this is either the coolest nightclub in the galaxy, or I'm about to star in a very intense music video. What's the vibe here, Sylvara? I need context. She turned to him, her harness creaking as she folded her arms, accentuating the strength in her frame. The bonding of essence, she said, her voice steady but laced with something deeper, like a promise. It will bind you to the Kha'Vren, to us. Elias blinked, then let out a low whistle. Bonding of essence? Sounds like a marriage contract, but, hotter. Am I signing my soul away, or do I get a +1 for the reception? His tone was light, pure quill, but his stomach twisted. This was big, bigger than the light of stars, and Sylvara's eyes held a weight that made him wonder what she wasn't saying. Her lips twitched, a flicker of amusement, but her gaze didn't waver. You jest, she said, stepping closer, her scent, wild herbs and leather, washing over him. But this is no game. The bonding protects you. Without it, the elders will cast you out. Cast out, huh? Elias said, rubbing his neck where the red-gemmed necklace still hung, warm against his skin. Guess I'm not winning Prisoner of the Year anytime soon. All right, I'm in. But if I mess this up, they'll probably toss me into a plasma furnace, right? Gotta say, I'd rather have you as my lawyer than my executioner. Sylvara's eyes softened, and she gestured to the platform. Step forward, she said, and for once try not to talk. No promises, he shot back, grinning as he followed her. The chant grew louder, the warriors' voices rising like a tide, and Elias felt the cavern hum, like Virith itself was listening. He stepped onto the platform, Sylvara beside him, and the runes flared, bathing them in crimson light. A slab of alloy stood between them, its surface etched with flames, warm to the touch. "Okay," Elias said, eyeing the slab. "What's the deal? We high-five this thing. Or was it more like a galactic pinky swear?" He glanced at Sylvara, expecting a scowl, but she was watching him, her expression unreadable, her fur glowing like molten silver. "Place your hand here," she said, laying her own hand on the slab, her claws glinting. Elias hesitated, then followed, his palm pressing against the metal. It was hot, almost alive, and when their fingers brushed, he felt a jolt. Not pain, but something deeper, like a current tying them together. Sylvara's eyes locked onto his, and she leaned closer, her breath grazing his neck, warm and scented with that wild, herbal tang that made his head spin. "Whoa, hold up," he said, voice dropping to a husky whisper, pure Tony Stark charm kicking in. "You know your breath's basically a galactic health hazard, right? One whiff, and my heart's filing for overtime. You could get sued for causing cardiac chaos." Her lips curved, a rare, fleeting smile that hit him like a supernova. "Your heart," she murmured, her voice low, "is trouble enough without me." She didn't pull back, and the air between them thickened, charged with a heat that had nothing to do with the fortress. Her fur brushed his arm, soft as silk, and Elias swallowed hard, his grin faltering as he fought the urge to close the gap. "Okay, that's playing dirty," he said, trying to keep it light. "You can't just smile like that and expect me to focus. I'm supposed to be bonding with essence, not whatever this is." He gestured vaguely between them, his pulse racing like he'd sprinted across Nova Reach. The slab pulsed, and the crystals overhead flared, bathing the cavern in light. The chant reached a crescendo, a wild, soaring song that felt like it could crack the stars. Elias glanced at the warriors, half expecting them to start chanting Kiss, but their eyes were fixed on the slab, where the runes glowed brighter, sealing something he couldn't name. "Is that it?" he asked, glancing at Sylvara. "We're bonded now? Do I get a certificate, or is this more of a vow and silence deal?" "It is done," she said, stepping back, but her gaze lingered, heavy with meaning. "You are Kha'Vren now." In part. In part." Elias raised an eyebrow, following her off the platform. "So what? I'm like an honorary beastfolk. Do I get a tail? Or was that extra credit?" She stopped, turning to face him, so close he could feel the warmth of her. "You are impossible," she said, but her voice was soft, almost fond, and her hand brushed his arm again, lingering just long enough to make his skin tingle. "Impossible's my middle name," he replied, leaning in slightly. "Well, technically it's James, but don't tell anyone. Kinda ruins the mystique." He grinned, but his eyes held hers, searching for that spark he'd seen before. The warriors began to disperse, their chant fading, but Sylvara stayed, her tail flicking slowly. "You survived," she said. "That is enough for now." "Survived? I crushed it," Elias said, puffing out his chest. "Though, gotta admit, I was half expecting to botch the whole thing and end up as plasma toast. Thanks for the save, by the way. You're racking up points on the Elias owes you scoreboard." Her smile returned, small but real, and she turned toward the tunnel. "Come," she said. "The night is not over." "Oh, now you're talking," Elias said, falling in a step beside her. "Night's young, cavern spooky, and I'm officially bonded to a warrior goddess." Diplomatic tip number 3. When life gives you rituals, make sure you've got a wingman like Sylvara. As they walked, the crystal's light dimmed behind them, but the warmth of her presence lingered, a promise of something more. Elias touched the necklace, still pulsing against his chest, and grinned to himself. Whatever this bond was, it felt like the start of something bigger than he'd ever bargained for. The Kha'Vren fortress trembled, a low growl rising from its molten depths, as if Virith itself sensed trouble. Elias Varn jogged beside Sylvara through a labyrinth of corridors, the walls pulsing red with heat, the air thick with ash and the sharp tang of ozone. Her silver fur gleamed under the flickering light, her amber eyes narrowed with focus, but there was a tension in her stride that set Elias's nerves on edge. They'd been patrolling the lower levels, Sylvara's idea, to show him the heart of Kha'Vren, when a distant explosion shook the stone, followed by shouts and the unmistakable clash of metal. "Okay, I'm no expert," Elias said, keeping pace despite his lungs burning, but that didn't sound like the dinner bell. "What's going on, Silver Star? Surprise party gone wrong." Sylvara shot him a glance, her tail lashing like a whip. "Rebellion," she said, her voice low and taut, like a drawn bowstring. "Some reject the bonding. They seek the Starshade." "Starshade?" Elias raised an eyebrow, dodging a crack in the floor where steam hissed out. "Sounds like a bad sci-fi flick. Let me guess. Big, scary thing we don't want waking up?" "Yeah, I've seen that movie. Spoiler, it never ends well." "Save your breath," she snapped, but her lips twitched, a flicker of amusement despite the chaos. She rounded a corner, and Elias followed, only to freeze as the corridor opened into a scene straight out of a nightmare. The walls were scorched, glowing with plasma leaks that cast wild shadows. A dozen Kha'Vren warriors faced off, half in leather harnesses like Sylvara's, the others in jagged armor, their fur matted with soot. At their center stood a beast man taller than the rest, his black fur streaked with scars, eyes like twin voids. His claws gripped a plasma-forged blade, its edge humming with green light. "Well, damn," Elias muttered, stepping back. "That guy looks like he eats diplomats for breakfast." "Friend of yours?" "Karath," Sylvara growled, her claws flexing. "Once a brother, now a fool." She stepped forward, shielding Elias, her posture radiating defiance. Karath's gaze snapped to them, and a sneer curled his lips, revealing fangs that glinted like daggers. "Sylvara," he rumbled, his voice a landslide. "You bring your pet human to die with you? The bonding defile us. This fortress will burn before I kneel to an outsider." Elias raised his hands, flashing a grin despite the sweat trickling down his spine. "Whoa, big guy, let's not get personal. I get it, you don't like me. Fair, I'm an acquired taste. But trashing the fortress? That's a bit extreme, don't you think? How about we find a table, crack open some glowing tubers, and talk it out?" Karath's eyes narrowed, and the rebel warriors growled, their blades humming louder. "Your words are weak," Karath spat. "Like you. Weak." Elias chuckled, leaning against the wall like he was at a bar, not a battlefield. "Buddy, I've negotiated with pirates who'd eat your lunch. If you want to throw down verbally, I'm your guy. Physical stuff? Not so much." He glanced at Sylvara, muttering, "I'm a diplomat, not a superhero. But if this guy wants a roast off, I'm winning hands down." Sylvara's tail flicked, and she hissed, "Stay behind me." But before she could move, a plasma conduit overhead ruptured, spitting green fire. Elias reacted on instinct, grabbing her arm and yanking her into a shadowed alcove as the corridor erupted in heat and light. They pressed against the wall, her fur brushing his chest, her breath hot against his neck, carrying that wild, herbal scent that made his head spin. Her amber eyes locked onto his, inches away, and for a heartbeat, the chaos faded, leaving only the two of them. "Okay," Elias said, voice low, a quill-like grin tugging at his lips. "If I'd known dodging rebels would get me this close to you, I'd have started a riot days ago. Fair warning, though, my heart's doing backflips, and I'm blaming you." Sylvara glared, but the corner of her mouth curved, a faint, defiant smile that hit him like a shot of Nova Reach whiskey. "You talk," she murmured, her voice a velvet growl, "when you should run." Her hand rested on his arm, steadying him, and the warmth of her touch lingered, making his skin hum. "Yeah, well, running's overrated," he replied, leaning closer, his pulse racing. "Besides, I'm starting to like the company." Her eyes flickered, a mix of exasperation and something softer, and Elias swore he felt the air crackle, like the plasma outside. The moment shattered as Karath's roar echoed, followed by the clash of blades. Sylvara pulled away, her claws gleaming as she stepped back into the corridor. "Stay here," she ordered, but Elias was already moving, grabbing a fallen metal rod from the debris. "No way," he said, twirling the rod like a baton, pure stark bravado. "I'm not sitting this one out. Besides, someone's got to keep you from turning Scarface into a rug." Sylvara lunged into the fray, a silver storm of claws and speed, her movements a deadly dance. Elias followed, less graceful but determined, swinging the rod at a rebel who got too close. The Kha'Vren staggered, and Elias ducked a plasma blade, panting. "Okay, note to self," he muttered, dodging another swing. "Stick to talking. Fighting's a terrible career move." Korath charged Sylvara, their blade sparking, but Elias saw an opening. He darted forward, slamming his rod into a plasma conduit above, sending a shower of sparks onto the rebels. They flinched, and Sylvara seized the chance, knocking Korath back with a swipe of her claws. She glanced at Elias, her eyes fierce but approving, and he grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not bad, right?" he called, ducking behind a pillar. "I'm basically a galactic hero now. Sign me up for the sequel." The rebels regrouped, but a deeper rumble shook the fortress, coming from below. Sylvara froze, her ears twitching. "The vault," she said, her voice urgent. "They're after the star shade." Elias nodded, gripping the rod tighter. "Guess recess is over," he said. "Lead the way, Silver Star. Let's keep this party from getting apocalyptic." As they ran toward the vault, Elias glanced at Sylvara, her fur streaked with soot, her eyes burning with resolve. He'd started this day a prisoner, but now he was fighting beside her, and damn if it didn't feel right. The Kha'Vren fortress groaned, its molten heart shuddering as Elias Varn and Sylvara sprinted through a crumbling corridor toward the vault. The air was a furnace, thick with ash and the electric tang of plasma, the walls pulsing red like a dying star. Sylvara led the way, her silver fur streaked with soot, her amber eyes blazing with urgency. Elias clutched his scavenged metal rod, his lungs burning, but he kept pace, driven by the low, ominous hum vibrating through the stone, a sound that felt alive, hungry, and very much not on their side. "Okay, Silver Star," he panted, dodging a shower of sparks from a ruptured conduit. "Remind me why we're running toward the scary noise? I'm more of a flee from danger guy, you know." "The star shade," Sylvara said, her voice a taut growl, cutting through the chaos. "If Korath wakes it, this fortress falls. All of Virith falls." "Fantastic," Elias muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "No pressure, then. Just saving a planet with a stick and a bad haircut. Diplomatic career highlight, right here." They burst into the vault chamber, and Elias skidded to a halt, his jaw dropping. The cavern was vast, a cathedral of black stone lit by towering pillars carved with runes that flickered like dying embers. At its center, a massive crystal cage pulsed with dark energy, and inside, the star shade writhed, a formless mass of black light, its tendrils coiling like liquid smoke, whispering in a language that clawed at Elias's mind. Korath stood before it, his black fur bristling, plasma blade raised, flanked by two rebel warriors. The cage's runes flickered, weakening, and the whispers grew louder, a siren call promising power and ruin. "Well, crap," Elias said, gripping his rod tighter. "Hey, Tentacle Nightmare, I didn't sign up to wrestle space demons, okay? Any chance you want to take a nap instead?" His Tony Stark bravado masked the chill creeping up his spine, but the Starshade's whispers dug deeper, pulling at memories of failure. Nova Reach, the summit, deals gone wrong. Sylvara's claws flexed, her tail lashing. "Korath!" she roared, stepping forward, her voice ablade. "You betray everything we are." Korath turned, his void-like eyes glinting with madness. "You cling to weakness, Sylvara," he snarled. "This human taints us. The star shade will cleanse our shame." He swung his blade at the cage, and a rune shattered, the whispers surging like a tidal wave. Elias flinched, the Starshade's voice slithering through his head, but Sylvara's presence grounded him, her scent, wild herbs and leather, cutting through the haze. "Yeah, no," he muttered, shaking it off. "I'm not here for your mind games, Squid Face. Let's keep this simple." Sylvara lunged, a silver blur, her claws clashing with Karatha's blade in a shower of sparks. The rebels charged, and Elias dove behind a pillar, swinging his rod at one who got too close. The beastman staggered, and Elias ducked a claw swipe, panting. "Okay, Elias," he told himself, "you're a diplomat, not a gladiator. Stick to words, not whatever this is." He glanced at Sylvara, locked in combat, and saw Karath aim a brutal kick at her side. "No, you don't," Elias shouted, darting out. He swung his rod, catching Karatha's arm, but the beastman roared, backhanding him into a pillar. Pain exploded in Elias's ribs, and he gasped, sliding to the floor. Sylvara spun, her eyes flashing with fury, and tackled Karath, pinning him long enough to knock his blade away. "Elias," she called, her voice sharp but laced with worry. "The levers, now." He staggered up, spotting two ancient levers on opposite sides of the cage, their runes glowing faintly. "Levers, got it," he wheezed, limping toward one. "Ancient tech. Please. I couldn't even fix the coffee maker back on Nova Reach. If this thing needs a password, we're screwed." His quill-like muttering kept his fear at bay as he gripped the lever, its metal hot under his palm. Sylvara reached the other, her fur blazing under the cage's dark light. "Together," she shouted, her eyes locking onto his across the chamber. The star shade thrashed, its whispers now a scream, and Karath staggered up, bloodied but unbowed. "Hope you're ready for overtime, Silver Star," Elias called, grinning despite the pain. "If we pull this off, I'm requesting a medal. Or at least a meal that doesn't glow in the dark." Sylvara's lips curved, a rare laugh breaking free, bright as a star in the gloom, and Elias froze for a split second, stunned by how it lit her face, like dawn breaking through a storm. "Focus," she snapped, but her smile lingered, and Elias felt a surge of something fierce, like the bonding itself was pushing him forward. "Now!" she yelled, and they pulled the levers in unison. The runes flared, blinding white, and the cage pulsed, sealing the starshade's tendrils in a web of light. The whispers faded, replaced by a low hum, and Karath roared, charging Sylvara. Elias acted without thinking, shoving her out of the way and taking the hit, a glancing blow that sent him sprawling but spared her. The cage stabilized, its runes locking into place, and Karath collapsed, defeated by Sylvara's final strike. The rebels fled, their growls echoing as the chamber fell silent. Elias lay on the stone, catching his breath, and Sylvara knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder, her touch warm through his torn jacket. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice soft, almost raw, her amber eyes searching his. "Yeah, well," Elias said, sitting up with a wince, "couldn't let you have all the fun. Plus, I'm kind of attached to you now. You know, bonded and all." He grinned, pure quill charm, and she shook her head, that smile returning, a quiet glow that made his chest tighten. They leaned against the pillar, Kiet's strength, her shoulder brushing his. The vault was still, but a faint tremor ran through the stone, a reminder that the star shade wasn't gone, just caged. "We did it," Elias said, his voice softer now. "Team Human Beastfolk, 1. Cosmic Horror, 0. "For now," Sylvara murmured, her hand still on his shoulder, grounding him in the dark. The Kha'Vren fortress was quieter now, its molten pulse subdued, as if Virith itself were catching its breath after the starshade's near awakening. Elias Varn walked beside Sylvara through a wide corridor, the walls etched with flame-like runes that glowed a soft crimson, casting their shadows in flickering waves. His ribs ached from Karatha's blow. His torn jacket hung like a badge of survival, but the red-gemmed necklace at his chest pulsed warmly, a reminder of the bonding. Sylvara's silver fur gleamed, her harness creaking faintly, and her amber eyes held a focus that made Elias's pulse skip, not from pain, but from the way she glanced at him, like he was more than just a human who'd stumbled in her world. "So," Elias said, breaking the silence with a grin, "after fighting cosmic squid and rogue beastfolk, what's next? Beach vacation? Or are we diving straight into another life-or-death ritual?" "I'm flexible," but I'd kill for a burger right now. Sylvara's tail flicked, and she shot him a look, half exasperation, half amusement. You survived the vault, she said, her voice smooth as smoke. Yet you still talk like a fool. Fool's my brand, he replied, winking. Keeps me alive. Plus, it's hard to shut up when I'm walking next to a warrior goddess. You're making it real tough to focus, Silver Star. Her lips twitched, and Elias swore he saw a spark in her eyes, fleeting but bright, like a star winking through a storm. They reached a massive archway, its stone carved with scenes of Kha'Vren warriors bathed in fire. Beyond it lay a vast hall, its ceiling lost in shadows, its floor a mosaic of obsidian and crystal that reflected torchlight like a frozen galaxy. Rows of beastfolk stood along the walls, warriors, elders, even younglings with wide, curious eyes, watching as Elias and Sylvara stepped forward. At the far end, a crescent of 7 elders sat on stone thrones, their fur ranging from ash gray to ember red, their gazes heavy with judgment. The air was thick, not with sulfur, but with expectation, and Elias felt it press against his chest like a physical weight. Wow, he muttered, leaning toward Sylvara. This place screams final boss meeting. Should I have brought a tie? Or at least a less beat-up jacket? Be serious, she whispered, but her hand brushed his, a quick, grounding touch that sent a jolt through him. The council decides your place now. Place, huh? Elias said, straightening. Hope it comes with a corner office and no more plasma traps. He flashed a grin, pure quill charm, and stepped into the center of the hall, feeling every eye on him like a spotlight. The eldest counselor, a Kha'Vren with fur like charred coal and eyes like twin suns, rose, his staff glowing faintly. Elias Varn, he intoned, voice echoing, you have walked through fire, bound your essence to ours, and sealed the star shade. Yet you are human. Why should Kha'Vren call you kin? Elias cleared his throat, spreading his hands. Look, I know you guys love your fire rituals, and props, they're intense. But how about next time we try something less toasty? Like a barbecue? I'm great with a grill. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd, and a few younglings snickered, their tails flicking. The elder's eyes narrowed, but Elias pressed on, his Tony Stark swagger in full swing. Seriously, I'm not here to mess things up. I came to talk peace, got caught in an explosion, and somehow ended up fighting for this place. If that's not kin-worthy, I don't know what is. Sylvara stepped beside him, her presence like a shield. He speaks truth, she said, her voice clear and fierce. Elias risked his life for us. He is no outsider. Her hand found his, fingers curling briefly around his palm, warm and steady, and Elias's heart did a little flip, caught off guard by the heat of her touch. He leaned closer, whispering, You grabbing my hand to cheer me on or to stop me from bolting? 'Cause, full disclosure, I'm weighing both options right now. Her eyes flicked to his, sharp but glinting with meaning, and Elias grinned, feeling the air between them crackle, a private spark in the hall's weighty silence. The elder raised his staff, silencing the murmurs. Bold words, he said, but trust is forged, not given. What do you offer, human? Elias took a breath, his mind flashing to a failed summit on Nova Reach. Angry delegates hurled fruit, a deal in tatters. Last time I tried winning over a crowd, he said, half to himself, they chucked space tomatoes. Messy, but educational. Here's hoping for flowers this time. He squared his shoulders, meeting the elder's gaze. What do I offer? A chance. I've seen what's out there. Warlords, pirates, empires that'd chew Virith up and spit out. I know how to talk them down, build bridges, keep the peace. You've got strength, claws, fire. I've got words, stubbornness, and a knack for not dying. Together, we could be unstoppable. The crowd stirred, some nodding, others growling, and Elias caught a glimpse of a young warrior whispering to another, mimicking his grin. Sylvara's grip tightened, just for a moment, and he felt her strength flow into him, like the bonding was more than runes and light. You speak of peace, another elder said, her fur streaked with silver, yet you bring chaos. The star shade stirred because of you. Not exactly, Elias shot back, his voice steady. Karath stirred it because he couldn't handle change. Me? I help lock it down. If that's chaos, then sign me up for the cleanup crew. A few warriors chuckled, and the silver-furred elder coughed, a dry sound that Elias swore hid a laugh. Her eyes glinted, and he felt a surge of confidence, like he'd cracked a door open. Sylvara spoke again, her voice rising. He is the flame unbroken, she said, echoing her word from the arena. He fought for us, bled for us. Deny him, and you deny our strength. Her hand stayed in his, a quiet defiance, and Elias felt the hall shift, the crowd leaning forward, drawn to her fire. Okay, that's my cue, Elias said, stepping forward. Flame Unbroken's a hell of a title, but let's keep it simple. I'm Elias, and I'm here to help. Not because I'm a hero, trust me, I'm not, but because I believe in what you've got here. Give me a shot, and I'll prove it. The coal-furred elder stared, his staff dimming. You are bold, he said, and the bonding holds. The council names you kin, Elias Varn, voice of the Kha'Vren to the stars. A cheer rose, uneven at first, then swelling as warriors raised their claws. Elias exhaled, grinning. Voice to the stars? I can work with that. Just don't expect me to sing. My karaoke days are over. The crowd laughed, and the silver-furred elder coughed again, her shoulders shaking slightly, making Elias's grin widen. As the council dispersed, Sylvara led him away, her hand still brushing his. You did well, she said, her voice soft, almost proud. Did I? Elias said, leaning closer. 'Cause I'm pretty sure I just winged it. Thanks for the backup, Silver Star. I owe you a galaxy-sized favor now. Her smile was small but real, a warmth that lit her eyes. You owe me nothing, she said, but her fingers lingered, and Elias knew. Whatever this was, it was just beginning. The Kha'Vren fortress slept under a rare calm. Its molten pulse softened to a whisper, as if Virith itself approved of the peace carved from chaos. Elias Varn stood on a high balcony overlooking the jagged peaks of the planet, where crimson clouds swirled beneath a sky ablaze with stars. The air was cool for once, carrying a faint scent of ash and wild herbs, and the red-gemmed necklace at his chest glowed faintly, a quiet echo of the bonding. His torn jacket was gone, replaced by a Kha'Vren tunic, dark leather, simple but snug, making him feel less like an outsider and more like he belonged. Sylvara stood beside him, her silver fur shimmering under the starlight, her amber eyes reflecting the cosmos above. Her leather harness was absent, replaced by a flowing cloak that hugged her curves, softening her warrior's edge into something almost ethereal. She leaned against the stone railing, her tail swaying gently, and Elias couldn't help but stare, caught by the way she seemed to blend with the night, like she was part of Virith's soul. Okay, he said, breaking the silence with a grin. I gotta say, this view's a serious upgrade from the prison cell. Stars, no plasma traps, and you looking like you just stepped out of galactic fairy tale. I'm calling this a win. Sylvara turned, her lips twitching with that familiar mix of exasperation and amusement. You find joy in everything, she said, her voice warm, like smoke curling around a flame. Even now, especially now, Elias replied, stepping closer, his quill-like charm dialed up. Survived a rebellion, sealed a cosmic horror, got a fancy new title. Voice to the stars, no big deal. If I don't crack a smile, I'm doing it wrong. He paused, his grin softening. Plus, I've got pretty great company. Makes it hard to complain. Her eyes held his, bright and searching, and Elias felt the air shift, charged with something deeper than words. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small cord he'd woven from leather scraps, tied with a single red bead that caught the starlight. So, he said, holding it up, I'm not exactly a craftsman. My last art project was a paper spaceship, total disaster, but I made this. For you. Don't chuck it into a plasma furnace if it's awful, okay? Sylvara's tail flicked, and she took the cord, her fingers brushing his, sending a spark through him. Her eyes glinted with a teasing light, and she tilted her head. It is simple, she said, her voice playful, "but I will keep it. For now. Simple's my style." Elias shot back, laughing. "Gotta start small before I graduate to forging magic necklaces like yours." He watched her tie the cord around her wrist, the bead resting against her fur, and his chest tightened, like the bonding had left a piece of him with her. He leaned against the railing, their shoulders almost touching, and let his mind wander back to that first day in the cell. "You know," he said, his voice quieter, "when I woke up chained in that dungeon, I thought you were the scariest jailer in the galaxy. All fur, claws, and talk less vibes. Now, I'm pretty sure you're only terrifying when I steal your grilled meat. Learned that the hard way." Sylvara laughed, a full, unguarded sound that rolled through the night like a melody, lighting her face with a joy Elias hadn't seen before. It was sunlight breaking through Viratha's clouds, and he froze, struck by how it made her glow, like she was his home in a world he'd never planned to stay. "You learn slowly," she said, her voice rich with mirth, "but you learn." "Damn," Elias said, grinning wide. "That laugh's dangerous, Silver Star. You keep that up, and I'm gonna need a warning label." He turned to face her, the stars framing her like a crown, and the teasing faded, replaced by something raw, undeniable. "I mean it, though. You're why I'm still here. Not the council, not the bonding, just you." Her laughter softened, but her eyes held his fierce and tender, like embers that could spark a wildfire. She stepped closer, her cloak brushing his arm, her scent, herbs, leather, starlight, wrapping around him. "And you," she said, her voice low, "are why I see beyond these stones." Elias's heart pounded, and he leaned in, his hand finding hers, fingers lacing together like they'd done it 1,000 times. "So," he said, his Tony Stark swagger surfacing, "if I kiss you under Viratha's stars, will the fortress throw us a fireworks show? 'Cause I'm really banking on some pyrotechnics here." Sylvara's lips curved, a smile that promised everything, and she closed the gap, her breath warm against his. "Try," she whispered, "and see." He did. Their lips met, soft at first, then deeper, a rush of heat and starlight that drowned out the world. The wind stirred, carrying whispers of crystal and fire, and Elias felt Virath hum beneath them, like the planet was singing their story. Her fur brushed his cheek, her hand tightening in his, and time slipped away, leaving only the two of them, bound by more than runes or rituals. When they parted, Elias grinned, breathless. "No fireworks," he said, "but I'll take it. Best negotiation I've ever closed." Sylvara's laugh returned, quieter now, and she rested her forehead against his, her eyes bright with a future they'd forged together. "The stars are enough," she said, and Elias knew she was right.